What is a red flag that made you end a relationship immediately? I set a date with a girl and said, let's meet at this restaurant at this time. She said, cool, I'll see you there at 7. I arrived at 7, had a reservation, sat down and waited. Time passed and I received no text. I messaged her, hey, are you on your way? But heard nothing back. I sat there for another 25 minutes, texted again, waited for 10 and then asked for the check. I saw some friends at the bar and had a couple of bourbons. The girl showed up 2 hours later and asked if I was ready for dinner. I was like, looks at watch. I texted you an hour and a half ago and never heard back. I've already moved on with my evening. There was no apology. Nothing. She was like, well, we can reschedule for another day. I looked at my watch and said, sure, I'll let you know when I'm free. I never reached out to set up another date. Story 2. I never drank alcohol, so I never thought anything of it. One night he drank with a group of new people, got incredibly aggressive, and harmed one guy and almost me. The next morning he said he didn't remember a thing, but over the next few days he got angry because the other person had blocked him from everything and said he was dangerous. He said, it wasn't even that bad. I just hit the guy, and so he remembered everything, and somehow it was my fault. I was terrified and kicked him out of my life. Story 3. I was doing the dishes, not even aware we were in a fight. I was just standing there scrubbing a pot when I saw a bottle of bleach sail through my vision and explode against the wall right in front of me. Then a woman was screaming at me. That was when I realized I wasn't going through this anymore. I grabbed a hand towel, dried my hands, walked over, picked up the dog, a small one, walked out the door to my parents' house, which was a little over a mile away. Story 4. Technically, I was in high school and breaking up with a guy when he threw up the red flag. He realized I was ending things and he got mad. More mad than I had ever seen him. He made me promise that I'd attend his prom with him. He was obsessed with not having a date for his prom in May. We went to different schools and he didn't want me to tell my friends that we had broken up. I told him that I wasn't going to do that. He came back with, well, I'm not going to tell my friends that we broke up. I told him that he could tell his friends whatever he wanted to. I broke up with them in January and we hadn't even talked about prom yet. I was so scared and freaked out by the conversation and how visibly angry he got that I just told him I'd go with him so that I could leave. He wanted me to stay longer so that his parents didn't realize we were breaking up. He was talking through tightly clenched teeth and I just wanted to get out of his house. I blocked him everywhere, but he ended up calling my house in early May. My dad took the call. It was great. I only heard my dad's side of the conversation. Who is this? Who? Didn't she break up with you months ago? Prom? When was the last time the two of you even talked? January, you say. Look, she's not going with you to prom. She doesn't want to see you. Lose her number, and if you call us again, I'll be calling the police. I've never felt so vindicated ending a relationship. Story 5. This is a kind of dumb story. In high school, there was a weird string of boys threatening to end it all to get the attention of girls. It was obvious that these were not real cries for help, but attempts to garner sympathy or manipulate girls into staying in a toxic relationship. I made a joke to my boyfriend at the time that if he did that to me, I'd push him off the roof. The guy had actually threatened to jump off the school roof and his girlfriend wanted to break up. It was a whole thing. Anyway, skip to about 4 months later and this man, her boy, becomes just the worst boyfriend. It turns out he cheated on me and was trying to get me to break up with him, I guess. It's a long, messy story and we were teenagers, so everything was the end of the world. Lol. We broke up. A few months later, he regrets it, I think. Not really sure. I'd already moved on and wanted nothing more than an apology from him. He calls me one night. Hi. So, 10 out of 10 for that. He started going on some rant about how I was the best thing in his life and how he ruined it. How his life was terrible now, yada yada. He then drops the bomb. If you don't forgive me, I guess I'm worthless and I should just end it all. I just laughed at him and told him, well, good luck with that, and hung up. I never spoke to him again. And spoiler alert, 10 plus years later, he's still alive. He never attempted to end it all. Also, a side note before people lose their minds at me, if I'd thought for 1 second that this threat was real, I would have been all hands on deck, but I have been clinically depressed and have known people who are so depressed they have attempted to end it all. They don't call you at 2 a.m. high and tell you they will end it all if you don't forgive them. In fact, there are hardly signs at all. He was trying to manipulate me. He knew it, I knew it, and the NSA listening in on the call knew it. Story 6. I was the red flag. She was a single mother. I was totally fine with her being busy at first. I liked that I could do my own thing and we'd always come together. Within 6 months, though, it started to get to me. I should have known neither of us were ready at this point and called it off, at least temporarily. I became overbearing and started to become needy. I will tell you, as a man, I've never really been like that, but when you barely get one night out to yourselves for a few hours a month, you begin to wonder where your place is and what you're supposed to be doing. I suppose she had red flags of her own and I should have taken that and bowed out gracefully. Instead, because I really did love her, I just kept going despite knowing deep down it wasn't working. My biggest mistake was telling her I felt alone over the phone. I know she took that as a total neediness and weakness, but I didn't mean it as I feel lonely and need you with me 24/7. It meant that I felt alone in the relationship. It felt one-sided. I needed some kind of reciprocation. Oh well, too little too late. It ended messily when we could have remained friends until a later time. You live and you learn. Story 7. I was happily paying for everything until she started complaining about the occasional expenses she'd incur. I'd been working on site for about a week, and she had been getting home at 1 p.m. every day, so she made food for us once or twice. One day she went to the grocery store, got a few items for dinner, and immediately texted me, "I spend way too much on food. We need to talk." The conversation quickly shifted to how it was unfair that she would make food for us every day just because she got back home earlier than I did. Keep in mind, I paid for every single date we had been on, all the Ubers, the rent, and everything else. When we met, she quickly quit her job and implicitly moved into my place. She would want to go to the store for a snack, which was just a couple of dollars, and not bring a single penny, expecting me to pay for every last thing. I had to ask her to leave. As you'd expect, she made sure I paid for everything one last time. Story 8. I was 27 and started dating someone I knew from dating one of his friends when I was 22. I hadn't seen him in years and happened to run into him at a doctor's office. We talked, laughed, and reminisced about the past and exchanged numbers. The next morning, I found a box of the card on my car's windshield. Inside the box was a rose, and the card said, "I dreamed of holding you in my arms the very first time I saw you. I wish it had been me, but you chose Christian. Give me the chance to prove to you that I can be the one you love forever. Yours always, Tony." Well, he was gorgeous, and I thought it was so sweet, but I was constantly busy and for some reason always played hard to get, so I didn't call him. 3 days later, on a Friday, I walked out my door, and on my deck was a box with a dozen roses and a card. "I waited for your call. Let me take you out to dinner tonight. We'll go somewhere quiet, Italian seafood, anything you want. We'll walk along the beach and look at the stars. Yours always, Tony." Well, he hooked me. I gave in and called him. After the 4th day, we were together every night. Soon after, he started spending the night at my house. He started calling me more when we weren't together, asking where I was, what I was doing, who I was with, etc. About 4 months into the relationship, we decided to go to a local beach tavern or bar to watch a live band play. I absolutely loved the drums and actually played them when I was younger. I was having a great time, but after being there for maybe 20 minutes, he leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Why do you keep staring at the drummer?" I said, "What? Seriously?" I looked at him and there was nothing but fierce anger in his eyes. Then he said, "I think it would be wise to put your freaking head down. You're here with me." My body froze because I was petrified. Then he said, "I think it's time to freaking leave." I told him I had to go to the bathroom first. I couldn't even think, so I don't know how the words came out of my mouth. I went and called 911. I told them where I was and my home address because that's where we were going. Thank God I did, because as soon as we started driving down the road, he backhanded me and started yelling about me wanting other guys and cheating. I grew up in the small town we were in, so the cops that watched me grow up surrounded the car at gunpoint as soon as we turned my corner. They dragged him out of the car and put him into the ground. He was arrested, and his bail was set so high that there was no way for him to get out. He lost his job as a pharmaceutical sales representative, and I had to take time away from business to mentally recover. The reason I remember everything, word for word, is because I had to repeat it so many times to detectives, lawyers, and the court. Still have the cards he left me. So much for him making me happy for the rest of my life. Story 9. Last guy I dated had absolutely zero drive to function as an independent adult. He didn't know how to cook, his mom still did his laundry, and he was completely useless in any setting that required him to be even remotely handy. He was completely shocked when I told him I'd spend an afternoon changing out the bathroom faucet in my apartment because you need a plumber to do that. A couple of weeks later, I just gently explained that I couldn't spend any more of my time thinking about what he'd been like if we were raising children or managing our own home. Story 10. I went out for dinner with a couple of good friends. I got late, and around 3 a.m., one of them, a guy, drove me home because I was broke and couldn't afford an Uber. Student life, you know? The next morning, I told my boyfriend how kind that friend had been. His reaction? He screamed at me, called me a filthy witch, and said it would have been better if I'd walked home, approximately 6 miles, instead of accepting a ride from a friend. That was the moment I got up, walked away, and never looked back. No one who truly loves you will make you feel ashamed for being treated with kindness. Story 11. I stopped whatever this was before it turned into a relationship. A guy that I used to work with, that was really attractive and nice, or so I thought, found me online and messaged me a few months after I left the job. He told me that he had left the company too, and then he was being extremely flirtatious, to a point that I was questioning in my head what kind of person he really was. I had friends who told me that it was probably harmless flirting, but it turns out I was right. All he wanted were photos of me, even though I had already told him that if we were to start dating, it would be for a real relationship. He blatantly did not respect my boundaries because he kept being pushy, so then I basically told him in the nicest way possible to go screw himself. I should have known he was bad news since that job was like walking into a snake pit. Story 12. I wear hearing aids, and he knew that I don't always hear well. I sometimes struggle to hear people when they talk very softly. The first time this happened, my ex was talking softly because he was tired. I interrupted him while he was telling a story and asked him to say it again, but louder. He then lost his train of thought because he was overwhelmed that I had interrupted him. I can understand losing your story, so I later tried to keep that in mind and give him time to tell his story before asking him to repeat it. Another time, it happened again. So I let him talk, listening very closely to what he was saying. We were in the bedroom, so there wasn't a lot of other noises, but I still couldn't hear what he said. I asked if he could tell it again, louder, and his response was, "You should have listened to it better." For me, I really did my best. I was listening closely, but his volume sounded to me almost muted, and there were so many more red flags I didn't see at first. Story 13. I didn't break up with him at the time, but I should have. I dated a boy in high school and went over to his house for dinner one night. His home life was strange to me, but I didn't think much of it at the time. That night, at dinner, his mom was prepping stuff in the kitchen, and she dropped a plastic cup of ice. It was no big deal, just ice on the ground. But she completely froze, started shaking and crying and apologizing to her husband. "I'm so sorry, it was an accident. I'm so sorry, let me clean this up." Meanwhile, she's sobbing, and he's like, "No, it's fine." I was so confused because I was like, "It's just ice. Are you okay?" The biggest through line of the whole relationship was, "I'm going to take you away from your family, and they'll have to ask me to see you instead of the other way around." I had a really crappy home life, so it seemed like a Prince Charming saving me thing. Keep in mind, this was the first boyfriend I ever had, and I had no idea this was weird. The relationship ended about a month later after I found out he cheated on me at the behest of his family because, wait for it, I had my phone taken away. He and his mother started messaging my mom, imploring her to give me my phone back because it wasn't fair. She refused, so his mom said she needed to find someone at their church who would submit to him the way a woman should. They set him up on a date with a girl from their church who was in my grade. He was a grade under me, and they were also deeply entrenched in a Pentecostal church. I did not grow up religious at all. As an aside, I have no issue with Pentecostals, but he went to the extreme church with snakes and crap. Then his mom texted my mom saying we needed to break up. My mom was like, "Tell your son to grow a pair and tell my daughter himself," which did not go over well. And she called my mom a dumb fat witch. Even though she was over 400 pounds and chronically unemployed, he called me a disgusting witch who never deserved love. Again, I quite literally did nothing but get my phone taken away. I found out he once tossed an axe toward the girl he dated after me during an argument while she was running away from him. She was not harmed, thank God, but what the heck? Story 14. He got upset, went to the bathroom, and punched a hole in my wall. I was told I'm uppity because I didn't want him to refer to me as bruh. Another guy I met within the first week asked why I didn't have a more expensive car based on my career. My car is paid for, by the way, but okay. Spend more money to look a certain way? Makes sense, right? When he mentioned why I didn't do something the way his ex-wife did, what the heck? Another guy, in our first conversation, bashed the mother of his one child for putting him on child support. His son was 20. Lol. They were in relationships, but they were a clear red flag for me to exit immediately. I have so many more instances. Ugh. Story 15. My boyfriend in his early 20s was a sweet guy until he started stealing. It began with small petty things like swiping silverware from restaurants, which then progressed to dine and dashing with his friends. I dumped him after he pulled a gas drive-off with me in the car, and we were subsequently stopped by a state trooper. Found out he later served years in prison for armed burglary and has become an extremely hard-right, rabid trumper. Bullet dodged. Story 16. I started seeing my roommate's sister after she made it clear she was interested. A couple of weeks into it, she started telling me she loved me and skipping work to be at my apartment. She figured out what time I was getting home and would be there waiting for me. I had a routine of smoking a little bit and showering before anything else since I was a construction worker and pretty ripe after work. I had a camping trip planned with my cousins, and she tried to push her way into going and called off work for it after skipping every other shift that week. I left my phone charger at home so I could have a little break. When I got back that Monday evening, she called it quits. Thank goodness for that. Story 17. His sister, who he was very close with, told me I deserved to be treated better by a partner and that I should dump him. He and I had been dating for about 4 years at this point, and he was a very selfish, jealous, and manipulative man. Kind of blew my mind. She was really cool, about 10 years older than us, and she was divorced after a crappy marriage. She was looking out for a younger girl, even if it was her brother's girlfriend. I still love her for that because she was right, and I dumped him shortly after. Story 18. There was a guy I met on Tinder. We texted a lot before actually meeting, especially because it was during lockdown and he was really nice and fun to talk to. One time I snuck him inside and we ended up having intimacy. It was not that great, but it wasn't bad either, and we didn't use protection. One thing you should know about me is that I'd been having unprotected intimacy for a while because I didn't value myself that much. My mom taught me that if I did it outside of my fertile days and he pulled out, it was mostly safe. Of course, having unprotected intimacy with strangers is not safe. Regardless of pregnancy, I know that now. As I remember, we had another date like this, but when we started discussing the third one over text, I told him that this time I would like him to wear protection, as I was getting close to my fertile days and I was a bit scared. He was not happy about it and started bargaining. When it didn't budge, he went on about how it would be so much worse for him and that he didn't even enjoy our last intimacy that much because I'm too small and he had to hold back and stuff. He also told me my bed was too small and that sleeping there was uncomfortable. He basically started to whine about things I literally can't control, and I ended up texting him that he should screw off. We never met again. He apologized after a while, but I'm glad I had at least enough self-confidence to never meet him again. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 19. I was a single mom with 2 small children, and I'd regularly go over to a married friend's house. They had similarly aged kids, so all the kids would play together. One of the mothers was a stay-at-home mom, and the other worked outside the home. I was friends with both of them. Sometimes the kids would be playing so well that they'd invite us to stay for dinner. We even went on a couple of day trips together with the kids. When the guy I was dating found out that the friends were two mothers, she looked at me and said, "You bring your kids over there?" I was naively incredibly confused about such a bizarre question, and our relationship basically ended after he started lecturing me about he'd never be okay with that. Story 20. I ran into this a lot when I was online dating. I call it the "what have you done for me lately" mentality. This is a person who only notices your most recent screw up, but not all the good things you've done. That screw up is the only thing that matters to them. I ran into this. I was roughly 6 months into a relationship. She and I were both in the military, and she was about to go on a deployment. I hung out with her for about a week beforehand. My car broke down, so I drove her around in a rental car. The day came for her to deploy. I was repairing my car when she called and asked me to drive roughly an hour to go see her. I said no, I needed to get my car fixed. She essentially threw a tantrum and said I never cared about her. I broke up with her. A person like that will never be happy with what you do for them. Story 21. Kept staring at other women while with me. I don't mean just checking them out, it was the continual turning of his head right in front of me for the same woman. And it would happen with another and another and another. Too many to count. He kept telling me it was all in my head. I brought it up about 10 times and he still said I was imagining it. He toned it down, but then he just started sneaking glances. Nothing changed. Out of respect for myself, I left. The worst part is that he prides himself on being a gentleman and opens doors for me, but then I started to see that he walks behind me to open the door and uses that as an opportunity to stare at women without me seeing. I started to see through all the BS. His gentlemanly ways were all performative. They didn't come from a genuine place. I really wish I hadn't given him the benefit of the doubt. I really loved him and gave everything to this man. Feels like such a betrayal. Story 22. In my early 20s, I was dating this girl. We were hanging out, and it was time for me to head to work. I told her it was time to get dressed and leave, but she was being cutesy and stalling. In a playful, cartoonishly aggressively way, I told her to hurry up. She started crying. She thought I was angry at her because that's how her dad sounded. I instantly knew there were some family or father issues at home, and I knew I was not emotionally mature enough to handle them. I started looking for a way out immediately. Still feel guilty that I couldn't help back then. Story 23. They'd only been together for 6 months. He threw a full-blown adult tantrum in the car, screaming at me, calling me names and the whole 9 yards because I misplaced the parking garage ticket. I didn't lose the ticket, I just forgot where I put it for safekeeping. Thanks, ADHD. After he stopped yelling, I found the ticket and we drove the 2 hours home in complete silence. When I dropped him off at his parents' place, I told him I couldn't continue the relationship after what happened, and I left. Fast forward a few weeks later, he showed up to my friend's job, knowing we shared a car at the time and I would be bringing her there with flowers, trying to apologize and wanting to get back together. I told him, "Sorry, but if that's how you react to a small inconvenience, then I don't want to be around you if an actual emergency or accident happens." To which he again flipped his lid, this time in a public cafe, with other people around to witness, saying that if I didn't give him another chance, he was going to end it all. That was it. I walked away from that conversation right then and there and didn't say another word to him while he continued to scream at me as I was walking away. I haven't seen him since. Story 34. He called me a witch and accused me of being with another guy when it took about 12 hours to text him back. This was overnight and I was sleeping for most of that time. I had family from out of town staying with me because my grandmother had just passed away and we were making arrangements. So I was completely overwhelmed and he knew this, but he texted me around 10 p.m. and I didn't get back to him until about 10 a.m. the next day. After he sent a bunch of vile, accusatory texts starting around 8 a.m., we'd only had maybe 3 dates and no discussion of seeing each other exclusively, so it was pretty easy to tell him to screw off and then block him. Story 25. Prior to this situation, my phone broke and my voice couldn't be heard unless I had an external microphone. Everyone in my life knew this. During this situation, I was house and dog sitting about 30 minutes away. I had to walk the dog, gather wood, start a fire in the wood stove, walk the dog again, and start dinner before it got dark for me to be comfortable. The situation. My boyfriend wanted to talk to me. I don't even remember the topic, but if it had been urgent, I would have hauled the energetic pit bull back to the house for my headphones. Since I didn't do that, it wasn't urgent. I kept telling him I couldn't talk right then because I didn't have my headphones and was outside walking the dog. "But you're texting me," he said. Then he called. I didn't answer and I texted back that the phone was broken and he wouldn't be able to hear me. He repeatedly called me. I texted him that I couldn't talk until I got back to the house to get my headphones. I told him that if it was important enough to spam me, it was important enough to hear me. If my voice wasn't needed, he could text me. I got through walking the dog, stacking logs in a sled, dragging logs about 20 feet to the house, unloading logs, and starting a fire with my phone constantly ringing. Finally, I texted him that we were over. I wouldn't have texted it, but since he couldn't wait for me to get my headphones after 30 to 45 minutes of chores, that's what he got. Story 26. After 3 or 4 dates, a man decided we were perfect for each other and suggested I quit my job as an attorney, and he would take care of my kids and me. I broke it off with him the next day and ended up having to get a restraining order to get him to leave me alone. Plot twist, he was a very well-regarded senior partner at a major national law firm. He was so offended that I unfairly broke up with him that he kindly offered, in writing, to ruin my reputation and legal career. The next day, his financial advisor called me to let me know that despite my bad treatment of him, he had fully funded college accounts for my kids, 3 and 5 at the time. because there was no reason the kid should suffer from my mistakes. What the heck? Bribe much? He was one of the craziest, normal passing people I've ever met. Story 27. The relationship didn't end. It never started because of this. The girl I had met through a friend asked me to hang out one-on-one multiple times, but she had a boyfriend. I told her we could hang out in a group setting, and that was as far as I would go. Fast forward a bit, and she broke up with her boyfriend. I waited a while, and finally we went out to dinner. She proceeded to tell me that she went to the bar with her friend the night before, got blackout intoxicated, and woke up in some random guy's house. I don't think I even talked to her about it. This was like 15 plus years ago. If I remember correctly, I ghosted her or just friend-zoned her. Story 28. Something small I noticed over a period of time, something I shouldn't have ignored in a relationship that lasted way too long and got too emotionally intimate. She slammed my car door every single time. And I mean slammed it. It didn't need to be slammed at all. Also, whenever I did something kind for her or made something nice, it was met with, "Oh, you shouldn't have." She decided to lie to me and sleep with some schmuck she met on Tinder after getting hammered. She was right. I shouldn't have. Story 29. I wouldn't say immediate, but it was before the first proper date. For context, I was in college, full-time, working, doing a student internship, and helping take care of a sick family member when I met this girl. We hit it off well and asked her out. I tried to schedule a proper date with her. Looking ahead for the rest of the week, I found a time that I could feasibly do and offered it. She would turn around and demand to do something that same night. We rinsed and repeated this 3 times, and I decided I couldn't do it if she wouldn't even try to communicate or plan her schedule and was instead going to make demands. I sent her a polite text that I didn't see things working out, and she lost her mind. Bullet dodged. Story 30. My sister was dating a guy for a few months. She went out for a casual but work-related coffee on a Sunday and had her phone muted. He knew she was going to this coffee date. After a couple of hours of her not picking up his calls, he started calling me. My sister and I lived together at the time. I told him not to worry and that the person she was with was a big talker. So she got home and he was parked outside the house and began screaming at her for making him worry. When she came in crying and told me what happened, I literally made her break up with him the next day. If this is how he behaves after 2 months and in a very much non-emergency situation, the control and anger would only get worse. She's now happily married to someone else. Story 31. I dated a guy I didn't want to date who kept pressuring me for more after I told him multiple times I didn't want a relationship. He just wouldn't stop pressing me. I broke things off with him multiple times and it kept persisting. I finally broke up with him for good, and a few weeks later I found out I was pregnant. I tried making things work with him because I felt obligated, and on the day of my first doctor's appointment, I made sure to make the worst of it. He basically said I didn't feel like getting my tests done that day, so I had to come back again the next day. My best friend took me. He was also a raging schmuck and treated me like crap, blaming it on him having to whiz. He'd gotten intoxicated, passed out, and didn't charge his hearing aids before the appointment, which was at 5 p.m., so he had literally all day. I was rushing the whole time because of this. After my appointment, I had a friend who was giving me hundreds of dollars worth of baby stuff, like a car seat and other things. I had to ask him to help me carry all the heavy stuff, and he acted annoyed that he had to get out of the car and said, "I'm not talking to her. My hearing aids are out." And I kid you not, he got mad that she didn't speak to him and said he felt disrespected. I realized that day that if I stayed with him, the rest of my life would be me walking on eggshells and worrying about his comfort and his feelings above mine and the baby's. I broke up with him the next day. A few days later, I stopped sharing my location with him, which he had a problem with, and asked me to share it with him again so he knows I'm safe. Now I'm going through the adoption process, and everyone in the adoption agency is acting like he's some kind of martyr for not fighting me on this. Even though he told me he would end it all if I got pregnant, I get to live with the guilt, shame, and grief while he's viewed as a man who did what's right. Story 32. He started crying about how much he hated his mom as soon as we started dating. He also knew I had feelings for another friend and decided it was better for me to be with him. He does this all the time. If one of his friends has feelings for a girl, he'll snatch them up. He would play League of Legends and ignore me and would constantly be late for everything. "Oh, I need to shower first." Which, you had the entire day to shower. Why are you deciding to do this 5 minutes before I come to pick you up? I lasted 2 weeks and told him he needed therapy. He was in my friend group and basically turned me into the villain for years. It was very difficult and hard for me. He's still the same person today and hasn't grown at all. Story 33. They posted about wanting to end it all and got mad at me when I called the police because I was terrified. I'd done something similar a few years before. My friend was telling me he wanted to end it all, so I called the cops. Afterward, I was scared he would be mad, but he told me he would never be mad at me for caring about him. So yeah, my friend reacted better than someone who was supposed to love me? No. Story 34. I once had a boyfriend who came from a very wealthy family. He would tell me about his family's cabin that, if I recall correctly, his grandfather had built. During one of our dates, it came up and he mentioned he would love to show it to me at some point. About a month goes by and my 6-year-old son and I were invited to dinner to meet his family. After dinner, my son, my boyfriend, and I all went to sit in the living room with his grandmother. This mother trucker looks at his grandmother and says, "Jess was wondering if we could get the keys to the cabin because she wants me to show it to her." The look that woman gave me, I will never forget. I was so uncomfortable. Needless to say, we didn't last much long after that. Let me be perfectly clear. The fact that he could not own up to his own intentions with his family and then put it on me really ticked me off. If it had been framed like, "Hey grandma, I've been telling Jess about our family's cabin and would really like to show it to her. Would that be okay?" This makes me cringe even writing about it. Story 35. Lack of self-awareness or situational awareness is what I'd call it. He would sometimes go without answering my texts for 12 hours and it never made it a problem, but when I didn't reply to a text of his in less than 30 minutes, he would immediately assume I was angry with him or something and say passive-aggressive things. I never gave him that kind of attitude, so I'm not sure why he would think that. I kindly ended things by saying that he was a great person, but our ways of communicating were too different from each other. To which he replied, "Just because I didn't write for 2 days, you decided that we're too different? That may be your natural, sir. I respect that, but it's definitely not mine." Story 36. We had decided on an errand date because I was really busy. The day was great. We each got the things we needed and had a good time. Upon leaving the store and heading towards his car, 4 unmarked police cars surrounded us out of nowhere and cops jumped out yelling, "Freeze!" which I immediately did. He dropped everything and went straight for the closest car. The cops all surrounded him, slammed him down in the hood of their unit while they cuffed him and dragged him to the back seat of one of the other cars. At this point, I was still playing Simon Says with the cops. I hadn't even breathed after they said freeze. They had all but forgotten about me entirely. I politely asked the nearest cop if I could go, and they said yes, so I dumped his groceries off there, pushed the cart home, he'd picked me up to get groceries, and blocked him. Story 37. My ex, from before I met my fiancé, talked about her ex-boyfriend a lot, to the point where it definitely sounded like she missed him. I asked her if she did, and she said, maybe. I wasn't going to be cheated on, so I told her I wasn't comfortable with it, but she ignored that boundary numerous times. I know she didn't physically cheat on me because the guy lived 5 states away at the time, and he was broke as hell, so he couldn't travel. I did break up with her because I wanted to maintain self-respect. Now I am with a woman who respects me and my boundaries, and I'm marrying her this September. Story 38. Oh god, I've broken up with so many people for many reasons. Here's a list. They were overly defensive or always the victim in every situation. We couldn't have a sound or respectful discussion about our relationship. They were disrespectful about my masculine and feminine presentations. I'm non-binary. They lacked drive or motivation, and if it was because they were depressed, mentally ill, or physically ill, they refused to get help or treatment from professionals. In all of these cases, the relationships only lasted 1 to 12 weeks. I feel bad about number 4 because I definitely do feel for people with health issues, but if they weren't at least trying to get help, it made being in a new relationship really hard. For example, I was in a relationship with someone who had throat and mouth surgery about a year before we started dating. He didn't have a job, so he spent his time smoking grass, going to the gym, and playing video games. Doing all that together was fun at first, but I got tired of doing the same 3 things. Neither of us drove at the time either, never had follow-up appointments, and wasn't doing anything to try to improve his health besides going to the gym. I was working at Starbucks at the time, so I was pretty much always tired. He was attractive, but the relationship was unfortunately so boring. On top of that, when I would bring it up, he would get defensive. I would encourage him to make a follow-up appointment for the doctor to see the progress of his healing, and he would get defensive. I do think he was also depressed, but once again, he refused to seek help. I broke up with him after 3 months with what I thought was a very thoughtful paragraph, basically saying he should just focus on himself right now. After he finally went to the doctor, he messaged me a picture of his diagnosis and healing progress and said some kind of mean things in a very bitter tone, like he was trying to do a gotcha. I don't fully remember anymore, but I basically responded and said, "I'm glad you're getting the help you need." To be fair, I'm sure he felt like I was calling him lazy or this or that. I won't lie, I did feel that way at some points. But again, I think that just signaled to me that our relationship was never going to make either of us happy. Story 39. I was super excited for my first dinner date with this girl. We'd been texting on and off for a few weeks, and everything seemed to be going well. We both liked swimming and seafood, history, etc., so I booked us at a nice restaurant roughly halfway between both our homes. She told me she lived right by a specific pond a few towns over. In my eagerness, I got to the restaurant 30 minutes early and took a seat at the bar while I waited. Eventually, our agreed-upon time came and went, and I could overhear the waitstaff and bartenders gossiping about what was going on. Turns out she didn't fully ghost me. She was just too shy to meet in person. She tried to make it up to me by texting me a selfie, and well, let me just say that it was about that time I realized this girl was about 8 stories tall and was a crustacean from the Proterozoic era. Story 40. I had been dating this guy for less than a month. I went on a spontaneous road trip for the weekend, and this was before cell phones, so I was completely out of pocket. Within 10 minutes of pulling into my driveway, the guy was at my door asking where I had been all weekend. He said he had tried calling and couldn't get a hold of me, drove by the house several times a day, and my car wasn't there. I said all of this under the guise of being worried, but we had been on a total of 4 dates. It wasn't a relationship or anything, and even if it had been, I still would have been running for the hills. I chewed him out, told him that not even my mom knew about my trip or where I was going, and that his behavior was creepy and disturbing. I told him to never call me again. The scary part was that both my roommates and I saw his car drive by or park close to the house for a couple of weeks after that. I was worried he was going to be a stalker, but he kept his distance. I ended up moving a couple of months later and never had to deal with it again. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.